Here we go. We have John Alite in the house, former enforcer and hitman for the Gotti and Gambino crime family.
How
Is
are
that,
you?
is that a fair description of your former life?
Yeah, that's a fair description of my former life, yes, without a doubt.
Okay, so this is your first time here, so let's go ahead and get into your whole story. So your family's actually Albanian.
Correct.
Okay, and I guess your grandfather came over.
Yeah, my grandfather came over initially, yeah. Left the rest of the family in Albania.
Okay, and then your dad was actually born here as well as you.
No, my dad was born in Albania, and my grandfather went back a couple of times, and then he eventually brought the whole family here.
Got it. Got it. So here you are, you're growing up in this Albanian family, and this was in Queens?
Queens, yeah, Woodhaven, Jamaica Avenue.
Got it. And growing up, you had a fairly rough childhood. I guess your dad raised you guys to be fighters at a very early age.
Yeah, well, because of the situation in Albania, suppression, and when he came to the city, he grew up himself in Delancey and Rivington, which was back then known as a big hub for gangsters like Vito Genovese and guys like that. So he understood the street and he understood suffering. So he wanted to make sure that me and my brother and some of my cousins can handle ourselves.
And your dad actually beat you quite a bit at an early age.
He wasn't, these days it depends on what you say. Like growing up when he was hitting us, it was a normal thing for families and parents to hit their kids. So I had a close relationship with my father. I never looked at it as he was an abuser. Like, these days they say they're abuser if you slap their hand. So I just took it as my father disciplining me, and rightfully so, because look what happened to me. So I don't think him trying to discipline me was anything than a parent, loving their kid and discipline. So yeah, I didn't look at it that way, yeah.
Okay, and I read your book, and one of the things I found kind of interesting was in your household, in your neighborhood, not only was your dad hitting you, but I guess your uncles were allowed to hit you, and your neighbors even were allowed to hit you.
Well, my neighbor across the street was Guido Russo, and he was very good friend. He was a butcher, and he was a gambler like my dad, and he and his wife Loretta were very close to us. They were almost like an aunt and uncle to us. And so if we did something wrong and he seen it, yeah, he would discipline us also. And this was normal for me growing up to be hit by neighbors, by uncles, and in that generation, I think it was almost normal in most of the households in my neighborhood anyway.
And according to your book, your dad really didn't care whether you won or lost a fight, just as long as you didn't back down.
Yeah, he didn't want me to be a coward, actually. So my biggest fear when I was a kid was facing my father, not facing one kid or five kids on the street. He just wanted me to say I fought and didn't let anybody take advantage of me, which I thought, as I got older, I thought was a good thing also. I believed in what he believed in.
Well, here you are growing up in this household, and the violence starts early on. But in the beginning, it's just fists and slaps and stuff like that. And at one point, it actually starts to escalate into stabbings and baseball bats and so forth. So, at what point were weapons used in your first encounter?
Well, me personally using weapons, my friends would the situation in my life was everybody was violent. Between my uncles, my father, the people that were around, gangsters, and then my friends were all violent. So I think I was a little behind the starting point of most of my friends. So I think I watched a lot of my friends on the street using guns, knives, and bats from 12 years on up. Believe it, very young age. These guys were in Spofford, and they were in the rehabilitation places and in and out of juvie. And I actually was a little nicer kid, a little slow behind the mark of the rest of the guys. But I guess the first time I actually jumped in and used a bat or something like that was probably about 15 years old, 16 even, I don't know, something like that.
Okay, so 15, 16 years old, you get into a fight and you pull out a baseball bat.
I don't know if it was no, it was never a one-on-one thing pulling out a bat, no. So if it was pulling out a bat, it was either group thing of guys fighting, and you're using a bat more as a defense thing, and I learned to be very aggressive with it. In other words, if I want to pull a bat, and the same later on in years, if I'm going to pull a knife or a gun, I'm going to use it. It wasn't just to pull it to scare somebody. I didn't have that mentality. I have the mentality to be aggressive.
Well, the first time you hit someone with a bat, how did you react afterwards?
I was used to violence, so blood never, like, me and my brother talk about this all the time. We're 3, 4 years old. Most kids, when they're bleeding, they're crying for their mother. We were just used to getting bloodied up. I mean, me and my brother are still that way. At this age, we're aggressive with our mouths. We're aggressive with weapons. We're aggressive with each other. We've hit each other with bottles, bats, threw each other through windows. I mean, my brother threw me through a second floor window. So we're just used to it. And then at the end of the day, we end up making up, hugging each other and say, I love you. I mean, this is just our mentality. We're just a little dysfunctional, but, that's life.